The next session will be the freedom of form and genre. We will have on stage Patricia Bernard, Mauricia D. A. Linde, Dr. Dhruvajyoti Bora, and Annie Zedina.
Great, okay, so I will just launch straight into this. This is, the topic is freedom of form and genre. We seem to have lost a couple of panelists, but to my left is Patricia, to my right is Dr. Dhruvajyoti. I'm going to begin by just introducing a little bit of myself and my connect to the topic as well. I write across several genres. My training is in journalism. That's how I started sort of my career, but I do write poetry and I write plays and some fiction as well. So each genre extracts something different from you, and each form imposes certain, oh great, our panelist Mauricio has come, please bring a chair. As I was just starting off and I was saying that each form and each genre requires something new and something different, and we all make choices of why and how we find our way to the particular form in which we work. So I'm going to ask each of you, all three of you, to answer that question about what made you choose your form. How did you make your way to the thing that you chose to write, or in Mauricio's case, translate? Mauricio, would you like to begin?
So, can you hear me? So this is the way I see it. This is a long-standing classic debate about freedom. Let's say, following the rigid conventions or the rules of a genre. So the debate is not anything new, right? There has been in history over the centuries. So my contention is that probably this tug of war of deviating from the classic rules of a literary genre, from the ingredients of the formula. So the willingness to move away from it must inevitably, start from the raw knowledge of the rules. So how can you break the rules if you don't know them pretty well? So this brings back to my mind a photographer, an American photographer. I don't know if you have ever heard about him, Eugene Smith. He was he's regarded as a master of photography. And he followed every single rule of the art of what he called photo essay. So, but at any point in time, he decided to move away from the rules. And he said, I didn't make the rules, so why should I follow them? So, I think, that this, let's say, antagonism between freedom and obedience to the form is something that, can only result in probably creating new forms starting from the old ones. So this is my idea about this pretty classic debate about as a translator. Probably that translation is defined by fidelity, which is follow everything that you can find in the book as faithfully as possible. The necessity to revitalize or re-energize the old text from a new perspective. So translation as a creative writing project also partakes of the same mechanisms, right? The polarity between freedom and rigidity, right? So I don't know pretty well how to answer
you chose fiction,
yeah.
Right? Why did you choose, say, short stories and fiction to translate, not poetry? Why that?
Well, personally, I have written some short stories that got published. There was a years ago, when I was a much younger guy. I consider that in order to do the same with poetry, in order to bring back, like a text written in a different language from the new perspective of different spatial temporal dimension, you need to be a little bit of a poet as well. And I consider myself to be a little bit of a frustrated, maybe short story writer. So definitely, the impetus is somehow or another there, right, to resurrect this text into giving life into a new language. And I consider that it is a titanic effort to do the same with poetry. To me, that's really, really difficult. So I never even given it a try. So anyway, so that's pretty much what I think about your starting question.
What about you? So would you tell me about why you chose your topic or your form, really, your genre? Why did you choose that?
I see we have been for a very, very long time mired in this endless debates about forms which are essentially European. And most of them are vast, useless. There are alternate traditions in this world of storytelling, and all modern novels are essentially good storytelling. Whatever you do, a text has to tell a story, a text has to portray a sentiment, an epoch, and many other things besides. So I don't at all go by the rules which have been framed. I leave it to the professors. I am a practitioner of the art of the novel. I don't go by rules. I try to create a good novel, a good text. And before me, there are endless Indian numbers of very, very good texts, excellent texts, which are not confined to novels or storytelling, but from the folk genre to the very evolved dramas. They traverse a whole lot. In my case, I mostly write novels. And also I do write short stories and novellas or longs to short stories also. But I have found that when I finally give shape to a novel, many a times I put my short stories there, I put my short fiction there, I put my novellas there, and an end product that comes out in the big novel is a conglomeration of all this. So I don't at all think that there is any exclusivity in the genres. It's fiction, it's storytelling with a purpose, and it has to be extremely good reading. The rest are all useless things. I write mainly about people who are in the margin of the society. Basically what you can say subaltern people. People who have to toil day and night to make their ends meet and live their own lives. Why? It's not that I have got any specific political or ideological bias to do that. I do that exclusively for the craft. Through them, you can portray the society in a better way than a suitable gentleman like me. So, with this initiative,
Patricia, you were telling me a very interesting story about how you came to writing itself, and for you, I think it wasn't a question of choice at all. Would you tell the story?
Can you hear me? Wave at the back, wave at the back. Yes, well, I think that fiction found me more than I found fiction. I've always, as a child, made up stories. I told my mother the most horrendous lies. I'd come home late for school and she'd say, "Why are you late from school?" "Oh, I found this lost elephant." And my mother would say, "Don't be crazy, we're in Australia, you can't find a lost elephant." "Yes, I did." "And what did you do with it?" "I took it to the airport." Now that would be when I was 5 years old. That was my famous, my mother used to say when I would open to my mouth, "Not another elephant story." So I always told stories. I was very good at telling stories. Then I became an artist when I got older, and I painted stories. And I loved my paintings because in my mind they were stories. And then after 15 years of painting, I decided that I would become a writer. But I didn't know how to write because I was still just a storyteller. It's so easy to tell a story. You wave your hands about, you smile, you say, "Oh, you know," and the story comes out. But when you have to sit down and write a story, which I was asked to do, it was very difficult because, first of all, I'm a very bad speller. I can't spell. I come from Australia. I don't spell well. I don't know how to do it. My grammar is different. And punctuation, forget it. I don't know where to put a comma. I don't believe anyone knows where to put a comma because every editor you get says the comma's in the wrong place. They move around at night. So I didn't know what I was going to write. And a friend of mine sold an idea I had told her to a publisher while I was in China. And she even got a check. She's a very good saleswoman. And so when I came back from China, she said, "Quick, you have to go to this publisher. I've sold an idea of yours. I've sold a book." And I had never written a book. And I said, "How many words are there in a book?" He said, "I don't know, count them." So we sat there and we counted all the words in an Enid Blyton children's book. So I knew how many words, 75,000 words. And then I wrote a chapter, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I just wrote a chapter of a story I'd been telling children for a long time. And it was a story that introduced children to Australian convict history. As you all know, the British sent us to Australia because they couldn't get rid of us any other way. And that's another story altogether. So I wrote this first chapter, took a huge wad of white paper, put an elastic band around it so it looked like there was 75,000 words there, but there was about 12,000. And off I went to see this publisher, who I didn't know at all. Now I must inform you that as a young woman, I was fired from my first 11 jobs. Probably because I couldn't spell, but they were all office work. And when I arrived at the publisher, I had to walk through this large office and I'm clutching this quarter book and thinking, they all know I'd been fired. They all know I was no good at office work. They all know. And when I got to the publisher, she was very nice and she said, "Have you finished the book?" "Not yet. I have to do a final edit. But I have a marvellous ending." And then she said, and we chatted away, and her arm kept coming out for my book, and I kept clutching this packet of blank pages to me. And in the end, she bought me some sandwiches and coffee, and I have to say, I've been with that publisher for over 20 years, and that's the only time they ever fed me any food, ever. So I ate the sandwiches, drank the coffee, and promised I would have the book finished in 6 months. Now, I had no idea how long it took to write a book. So it took 1.5 years. And when it came back, I sent it off very proud of myself and thrilled at having written this book. And it came back covered in red marks, as if it had the plague or the measles. Every single page was red marked everywhere. And I rang up the editor and said, "Why did you put that red mark?" "No commas." "Oh, why did you put that red mark?" "Comma in the wrong place." I hate commas. Why did you put them up? You didn't do any speech marks. How do I know the person is talking? After I had written that one book, it sold very well. I continued writing because I had so much fun, and I still have fun writing. But I write lots of genres. I do children's books because they bring you in the most money in Australia. I do science fiction because I'm fascinated with science fiction, and speculative fiction, which is different again. That's future fiction on Earth. I do fantasy because I love magic and I love fortune telling, and I've written this travel book about India because I love India. It's called With the Kama Sutra Under My Arm. I was going to talk about it, but I think it's a bit risque. And now I'm writing a story about a lost angel on Earth and a romance for Harlequin. I don't know if you get Harlequin or Mills and Boon, but I'm writing this fabulous romance. And it's taking longer and longer to write because I've got so many things happening. That's fiction found me. Thank goodness it did. I was so sick of painting.
Good. So, Patricia, you also, the question's for you. You also work in so many different genres. Like, I mean, when you started out, perhaps you were just thinking fiction and nothing else. But now there is this question of science fiction and fantasy, and everything is classified as a genre. And do you think that's to the good, or do you actually set about thinking, I'm going to write a science fiction novel? How does that process work?
No, it's not a good idea to switch genre from genre. Publishers like art gallery owners want your paintings all to look the same and can be recognised, and people can go, oh, you've got a Patricia Bernard on your wall. And publishers are the same. They like you to stick to the same genre so that they can sell you as a sci-fi writer or sell you as a romance writer. They don't like you to jump about. So that's a mistake I've made. But what happens is an idea pops into my head and bubbles away. I've got about 10 ideas of books, and they bubble away, and then one bubbles to the top. And that's the one I have to write that time. There's no question. It may not be the same as the one I wrote last month, but this time is the one I have to write. And so really there's no question. It's the one that bubbles up and won't let you sleep at night because you're writing dialogue in your head and talking to yourself when you're driving the car. I'm so pleased people have my iPhones now because they all talk to themselves. No, you don't look so insane. But before the iPhone, I was the only one walking down the street talking to myself without a phone. And so it's that one, the one that bubbles up.
So what do you think? That would you try your hand to say something that wasn't fiction? And under what circumstances, if you already have written, say, non-fiction or plays, what made you choose that particular form, if you chose it?
Besides fiction, I do write non-fiction. That is mainly social history. And my aim in writing this kind of non-fiction is to make history more popular with the masses. History is such an important subject, you cannot leave it to the academicians. The masses need to know it properly. So you have to popularize history and popularize history in a very, very different way. Catchy, readable, and at the same time illustrative, and also impart some knowledge. So that has been my effort, and that is the twin lines I have been pursuing. Fiction in one hand, and non-fiction of this history and social science kind of writing. But I have one to say, my colleague here has been saying about genres, fiction, children books, genres of science fiction, cyber books, and all these things. But I don't see any difference between good literature and these kind of genres. Just one example. What are Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment? Is it not a crime, but no? essentially Dostoevsky's writings are crime novels. But we take them as great literature of all times. See the new fantasy novels. Children read this, but adults read them also. Why? Besides the attraction, they speak in certain languages to adults also. And another thing, see, with most modern novels about this Dan Brown's, these are basically science fiction, and now you may look at them, look down at them as a very popular genre. But what difference doesn't exist at this time is between popular and highbrow literature. Good literature is there. I think
that's a whole different distinction, these two genres, popular and highbrow. Okay. Mauricio, you also teach, and I believe you teach drama. In your teaching work, in your translation work, do you sense that there is an essential difference of storytelling if you change the form?
Well, absolutely. So I wonder if the form is not the recipient of a particular tone and mood. And I'm thinking about classical examples, like Tennessee Williams comes to my mind. He originally wrote down the story, and then the story became the seed for a later, probably more elaborate play that he definitely brought to the theater. But if you compare one form to the other, right, you will see striking differences. And I'm not talking about differences of plot lines. What you can find is that many of the emotional feelings or personal things that he didn't want to tell in such a format as a play, he kept in, or he relegated, or he reserved for the storytelling of his short fiction. So in a way, and I guess here, we can think about the difference between private and public spaces, and also about the differences between venues. Short story fiction favors, like a small, ideologically maybe unbiased magazines, right? So he became a far more subversive writer when he was writing short fiction. That definitely, than when he was, presented his plays in the theater, even though it was off-Broadway theater, right? So there are differences, right? About
we were talking earlier about censorship too, because theater is more censored, and cinema is censored, of course. And do you see that censorship plays a role at all in choice of form?
Yeah, definitely, but also, there is something about the structure of the genre itself that probably favors, an undercurrent of meanings, that probably, can be easily, written, whereas some others, genres probably, those same ideas will be probably, left out or excluded. So think about the short story itself. I think it was somebody back in the 60s who said that the short story as a genre favors not only marginal characters, but also marginalized feelings, those you don't want to, put on display to the big general audience. And it's also, a censorship, right? So the establishment culture definitely controls, some venues of publication in a much more, a definite way than, I'm thinking about fanzines or, many, marginalized off the record, publication that probably, give room to a welter of ideas that wouldn't probably find a way in some other, a much more serious or official publications. So definitely some kind of emotions, find a way out into some kind of genres, and definitely the genres open its gates to particular ideas.
Basically, where your outlet also defines
Yeah,
form.
absolutely.
Where you find space. Okay, great. I think we're mostly out of time. Is there anyone who has any question at all that they want to ask?
You haven't spoken about how you choose your form
My forms.
since you started different genres.
Well, when I do non-fiction, I mostly do it. I do it for a living as well. That is part of it. But I think there are different impulses that drive you. Poetry is very momentary and it's very wispy, and if you don't catch the poem in the moment, you can't catch it at all. It's not like you can outline it and say, I'll come back to this tomorrow. That doesn't happen, at least not for me. I think I forget it completely. If either I catch it or I don't. If it's gone, it's just gone completely. But with fiction, I feel when I approach it, I'm looking for something and I don't know what. It's usually something that I have an image in my mind or a line, and I just start and I'm kind of feeling my way around in the dark. With non-fiction, there is absolute clarity about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. The purpose is very clear and social. You're picking up a subject that is of immediate, especially if it's something I would feel like it has to be addressed now. Like something's going on in the world around me and I have to write about it. Then I write an essay rather than a story. Yes, I think we're out of time. Thank you, thanks to the panel and thanks to the festival. And back to the...
OLF 2019 is immensely grateful to its executive sponsor, the Northeastern Council. It is immensely grateful to its associate sponsors, Coal India Limited, Mother Dairy, Phenolics Industries, Paradeep Phosphate Limited, Brahmas Aerospace, NCDC. OLF is supported by Central University of Odisha, the Punch and Tholi books.